Right now, they're very pleased to have with us on the program tonight from Reason Magazine, Radley Balco. And Radley, thank you so much, sir, for coming on the program.
Thanks for having me on.
My pleasure. Brian Aitken's mistake. This is it's a horrific story. It's something we've talked about on this program before, but I'm so glad to see that you guys are covering this at Reason. 7 years behind bars for, in essence, doing everything right, following New Jersey's gun laws, and they are hard to follow sometimes, but a guy tries his best to obey the law and still ends up behind bars for 7 years.
Yeah, it's a pretty terrible story, and it shows you in states like New Jersey just how much discretion police officers, prosecutors, and judges have, where a guy who pretty clearly was trying to do everything he could to comply with the law could still end up getting sentenced, convicted and sentenced. But Aiken, to, I guess, sort of summarize what happened, Aiken moved to Colorado a few years ago, got married he's from New Jersey, got married to a woman who was also from New Jersey. They had a child together. The marriage sort of dissolved. She moved back to New Jersey. And then he eventually moved back as well, just to be close to his son. And, you move from one side of the country to the other, several trips. Mm-hmm. He had to close out a house and, find a new place in New Jersey. So he's moving his belongings back and forth. And when he went back to Colorado for the final time to collect the last of his belongings, the final trip included collecting his guns. He had 3 handguns. He had bought all of them in Colorado, legally, passed a federal background check each time.
Okay.
And was concerned, knew about New Jersey's stringent gun laws, and actually, printed out the laws, both federal law and New Jersey law, when it comes to transporting guns, and actually called the New Jersey State Police to basically, get a step-by-step instruction on how to transport his guns. He this was in December 2008. Fast forward to January 2009, he had been moving his belongings into his parents' house in New Jersey while he looked for a new place. Found an apartment in Hoboken. Was in the process of sort of moving his belongings from his parents' house to his new apartment. As all this was happening, he was having some problems with his ex-wife, who, according to Brian Aitken, was denying him visitation to his son. A little distraught over all of this, and I guess he had made this trip to his parents' house to get some of his belongings. His mother noticed he was sort of down and made the mistake of calling the police. Basically, she was afraid that he was, going to hurt himself. Mm-hmm. She thought better of it as soon as she dialed 911, hung the phone up, but the call had already gone through. They sent a police officer out. She told him, that she was a little worried about him. They call him on a cell phone as he's driving to his new apartment, ask him to come back. So he comes back, car full of his stuff. Mm-hmm. Police officer actually testified that his car was full of his belongings. Mother testified that he was moving things. Roommate testified that he was moving things. They determined right away that he's not a threat to himself or to anyone else, but for whatever reason, they still end up searching his car. And that's where they find the guns in the trunk. 3 handguns. They were all locked. They were all unloaded. They were all basically, in compliance with both federal and state law for transporting weapons.
Okay.
The problem is, as I'm sure you and your listeners know, in New Jersey, only a very, very select few people can get a carry permit. Everyone else is caught with a gun outside of their home is assumed to be in violation of state law, and then it's up to you to put on an affirmative defense and claim one of the exceptions. And the problem with that is your ability to claim one of those exceptions is basically contingent on the judge allowing you to make that claim in court.
Because that's what happened in this case, right? The judge simply said, well, he wasn't moving.
Yeah, one of the exceptions is that you're allowed to move your guns between residences, and that's pretty clearly what he was doing. And the judge would not allow the jury to even hear that. The judge basically, I interviewed the judge for this article, and he said, well, that wasn't relevant. And I said, well, it seems that there was plenty of evidence put on that this guy was moving. And he said, well, no, he wasn't moving. You can't stretch out this window of moving over several weeks. And he also said, something else that was sort of interesting. He said that and I found out later, I guess this was in the police report, and Aitken and his attorney say it wasn't true. But the judge said that he wasn't moving, that he had put the guns in the trunk of his car because his roommate was having a party where people would be drinking, and Aitken didn't want his guns to be around people who were drinking, which the judge acknowledged to me was a responsible, sort of conscientious thing for a gun owner to do. However, he said that put him in violation of the law and made so he can't use the exception. So basically, according to the judge in this case, the version of events least favorable to Aitken basically mean he's getting 7 years for being a conscientious and responsible gun owner.
You hear these stories, Radley, and you just want to weep for New Jersey. I mean, because something like this, these laws didn't happen overnight, and it's going to be a darn difficult process to get these things fixed. But do you get the sense when talking to the judge, talking to Evan Knappen, I mean, is this story? It seems to me like if lawmakers hear about this, then maybe there's a chance in New Jersey that lawmakers will say there is no reason this guy should be behind bars. We have to do something to clear up the law so that things like this don't happen.
I don't know. I mean, I think there is look, this came about because in 2008 they actually strengthened the gun laws to the point where basically they changed the law so that illegally owning a handgun was the same level of offense as using a gun in the commission of a crime. So basically what Aitken did puts him in the same class of criminals as someone who actually uses a gun to assault someone, which is, ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
And another reason he was prosecuted, or at least what his attorneys think, is that the Attorney General in New Jersey a couple of years ago put out a directive to the state's prosecutors basically saying, go after gun owners tooth and nail. Don't hold back at all. Apply this law vigorously and uniformly. And basically, without context. So I don't know. I mean, there was you may be familiar with the details of this case. When I was researching Brian's case, there was another case of a guy in New Jersey who actually didn't even intend to be in New Jersey. He was there to switch flights.
Oh yeah.
To stay over, and had checked his guns in his baggage like you're supposed to do.
Yep.
But the connecting flight was canceled or delayed, and he had to stay overnight. And when the airline gave him his bag back, he was arrested for basically being in possession of a gun in New Jersey.
Spent 3 days, I think, in the Newark jail. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, this is sort of zero tolerance policies that we see all over the criminal justice system. But now we're seeing it applied to gun owners in some of these states that are really taking a hard line on gun ownership. And
the bottom line is, and you say it very well, putting Brian Aitken in prison is not going to make New Jersey any safer. I mean, when you look at places like Camden, New Jersey, Trenton, New Jersey, the problems that we're still seeing in places like Newark with gang violence, to think that putting Brian Aitken behind bars is going to send some sort of signal. It may very well send a signal, but I don't think it's the one that needs to be sent.
No, I think the signal it sends to New Jersey gun owners is don't call the cops. I mean, that probably sounds a little extreme, but, his mother called the cops because she was worried about him.
Yeah.
And what ended up happening to him, I mean, obviously he wasn't a threat to himself. Even the police determined that. What happened to him was far worse than what he could have done or what he was going to do to himself, which he was just depressed. He wasn't suicidal or anything. But I think that is the message. I mean, if I were a gun owner in New Jersey, I would be very, very reluctant to call the police because you never know if you're going to get the combination of cop, prosecutor, and judge that Aitken got.
You're absolutely right. Well, Radley, again, I can't thank you enough for coming on the program, and I really thank you for covering this story and giving it the attention it deserves.
Yeah, it would be great to see Governor Christie give Aitken a pardon. You'd hate to see this guy, even if this gets overturned on appeal, you'd hate to see him sitting in jail cell for a couple of years while all that gets worked out. A pardon would be quicker and get this guy back out and seeing his son and living his life again.
Let's hope. Radley Balco with the Reason Magazine. Thank you again, sir. Look forward to doing this again very soon.
Great. Thanks for having me on.
Have a good night, sir. Radley Balco, again, joining us here on Cam & Company, 31 after the hour. This story, we sometimes talk on this program about the intent of gun control laws, and sometimes maybe maybe I'm just an eternal optimist. And I think, a lot of these gun control supporters, they don't really know what they're doing. Look, the prosecutor knew darn well. The judge knew darn well what they were doing. They knew that Mr. Aitken was not a gang member. They knew that Mr. Aitken was not a violent criminal. They learned during the course of the trial, and the prosecutor certainly would have learned this before the trial began, that Mr. Aitken tried to do everything he could to stay within the boundaries of New Jersey's incredibly complex gun laws. By all accounts, Mr. Aitken was trying to be and in fact was, not just that he was trying to be, he succeeded in being a conscientious and responsible gun owner. And he got a 7-year prison sentence. At that point, there's no excuse for ignorance. There's no excuse of, I don't really know the issues here. Now, the message that was sent, and you have to assume it was the message that they wanted to send, was, it really just isn't worth it to be a gun owner. It's really not worth it to exercise your constitutional rights in New Jersey. And by the way, they've got this new bill that's in the New Jersey legislature now that is designed to make you say, it's really not worth it to contribute to political causes. It's really not worth it to give to a candidate or to give to an organization, because if I give to these organizations, then I have to report my name, I have to report the amount that I donated, I have to report who I work for to a government agency in New Jersey. This is the legislature, because again, keep in mind, these are the laws of New Jersey. These are legislative efforts, in some cases, to restrict your rights outright. But in a lot of cases, these are legislative efforts to put barriers in place that will just make it'll nudge you. It's the Cass Sunstein nudge, the choice architecture. Will just set up the choices that, yes, you can contribute to an organization if you want to. Yes, you can theoretically own a firearm if you want to. But the associated costs, and not all of them will be financial, the associated costs will be so high that it won't be worth it to do these things. It won't be worth it to take an interest in politics. It won't be worth it to own a gun for your self-defense. And when you have, again, you've got a legislature that is telling its residents not to robustly live the American experience and to exercise all of their rights. You have a legislature, no. We would prefer that if you just stayed in this little tiny room where we could keep a close eye on you, that would be for the benefit of all. It is a rather big brotherish derivative of the nanny state.